when you're in that moment with the caregiver who's walked into she's a stranger, walked into that place, and you see that it's all really about relationship and love and coming to terms with life and how we want somebody to leave this world. I mean, it's what gets me to say to caregivers when I orient them every week, it's like, this is a gift. This is like a gift you're giving to people that you can't put any kind of value on. What could be more meaningful? You're honoring somebody's humanity, giving them love, and when they leave this world, perhaps they are reminded and leaving the world thinking this world was about love. At the end of the day, that's what it was about.
Welcome back. Here we have John. And John, I got to ask you, building that $30 million business in healthcare is obviously no small thing to do, but doing it with love as a foundation, that's totally different. What's the one thing people truly misunderstand the most about home care and the way you run Tribute?
That at the end of the day, it's about the caregiver. These are sort of such obvious things to say, but it's about the caregiver. It's about the person we're sending into the home, and a company that does what we do needs to focus more on that part of what we do more than anything else. Who are we finding to do this work, and then how do we support them? If you can't do that and focus on that well, you really shouldn't be providing the service. And that's not only a good thing to do, but it's what people who need care want. They want somebody to walk through the door that they can have a relationship with. So that's what we focused on relentlessly since we started.
I love it. And John, before we get into the big lessons, I want to rewind a bit. You've got 30 plus years of experience as an entrepreneur in healthcare. What was the first thing that kind of really pulled you into this industry?
I worked in a nursing home as a teenager, quite by accident, for 2 summers outside of Philadelphia and back in the 70s. And I was so affected by what I saw. Now, I was just doing maintenance stuff, but boy, way back then, certainly more than there is today, but it still happens. But way back when, people would be put in nursing homes that didn't need to be there, and people who were perfectly sound mind, maybe they had a stroke, and I can remember this lady, and she partly paralyzed, and she's in a room with 4 other people, and nobody's visiting her, and she's losing her mind. Like, why am I here? And I was ill-equipped to provide comfort to people. I don't think, they would reach out to me as I would be in their rooms and stuff. It was just deeply affecting, and I don't know why that happened, and I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but that experience stayed with me. And when I had a brief stint on Wall Street after college, and then as a consultant after business school briefly, I got to do something in this space. There's a lot to do. There's a huge opportunity to do it right. Try to do it right. You can never do it entirely right. It's humans helping other humans, but it's to try to do it right. And I sort of knew that people, if I wanted to build something, people would be attracted to a mission that was about doing the right thing for people who need care, and also the people that provide it. So.
And how does faith, because we had a really good conversation when it came to faith, when it came to just God, and it was really good. But how does faith really play a role in how you lead and build relationships in this business?
Yeah, I have to. This is a hard one for me, and I have to be careful because I try. It's like I don't know if you can force humility. I think you can cultivate it. I try to bring humility to this because I am a latecomer, and by no means do I have I guess what I have, my faith is a knowing that and a certainty that the most important thing in life is love, and that love is something that was created. There's a creator behind love. The most incredible experiences I've had in my life have been about loving relationships with others, and also about the forgiveness that I think is part of life. When I screwed up, when I've done bad things, that there's been a chance to turn my life around. And I call that God, but I don't know if my God is your God. And I guess I would say what really got me on a journey to just, a spiritual path was reading the Sermon on the Mount, and particularly the Beatitudes, probably 20 years ago. And so I take the gospel very seriously. I wouldn't necessarily, my Christian friends, I don't know that I'm not a professed Christian. I'm not I haven't been baptized, but I'm in a Bible study group, which has been very helpful to me. And I guess the skeptic in the group, but I'm deeply moved by the
Yeah.
teachings of Jesus and by the gospels. And that's so,
John, what a conversation. I know we tapped into last time. It is a very tricky thing because
yeah,
it's like there's this a mold of what a Christian should look like, or
yeah,
a mold of what this person should look like. And I kind of with you. I may not go to church. I may not even be deep in the Bible, but it doesn't mean that we can't have our own relationships with God and how we see things.
I
And
completely agree. We're
so
actually,
I hear you.
we're, we're,
Uh,
we're reading Genesis, and I would advise people to, if you're, the very first book in the Bible, in the beginning, God created. I mean, if you're going to read that, boy, you got to be strong, because it's a very challenging God that's introduced there. But what the thing that is definitely introduced is a God who is, for whatever reason, can't help but love. Now that's imperfect, because we know there's a lot of suffering and all of that, and so they're all but that can't
100%.
help but love and be close and be part of the human experience, and that is very moving and comforting for me, and that's what I choose to kind of hang my hat on, and so that
So
love,
I got this question right here for
yeah,
for
yeah,
John, and this just kind of came up to mind, and then we could just transition.
yeah,
But you remember moments that God showed up in your life? You remember that? I know there's always moments
yes,
that He
yes,
does.
but I'm really hesitant. Like in Genesis, God speaks to Abraham. I mean, okay. God has never spoken to me. Have I felt um, forgiveness, deep forgiveness? And I've messed up in many ways in my life. And have I felt an overflowing love, like I felt when my mother died, and I was with her for 6 months as she was dying? A love that there was no boundary. It felt like a love that could just flow forever, that I couldn't contain. And that felt like this incredible opportunity that was not about, preserving our existence, right? Wasn't about Darwin. It was about something more than just this material existence. So I
I
don't know.
always say life is greater than us, man. Life
Yes.
is greater than us. And as you get a little older and you become a parent and you become an adult, you start to realize, yeah, it's none of the materialistic things, and life is so much more than us. And
Oh my
I
God.
love what you're saying, man. Because you're really dead on, and so many people just feel because you don't have this relationship like every other Christian, where maybe you're going to church every Sunday, maybe
Yeah.
you're living your life a little bit differently. But I still believe that God doesn't judge us because, John, as you mentioned, there was a time, in a place where maybe you weren't the best version of John,
Oh my
but
gosh. Most of my
but
life. No.
but you change, right?
No.
And I think what's the sweet thing about it, John, and you saying this, is that at any moment we can just make those changes. Is it easy?
Totally.
Not at all.
That's
Not at all.
that's a great. There's a Quaker song that has a phrase in it like, it's about turn, 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 and when we, keep turning until we finally find that place that's right with God, or whatever you want to call God, that's right with God. And I believe we have that opportunity at every juncture, and um, and I'm just so I will say blessed that I can have that I'm part of this company now, where this idea of how we treat each other is central. We're not, by no means are we perfect. And of course, what does it mean to love when you have to decide on pay increases? I mean, but, but if you have it there, if love is there, it's very helpful. because it puts downward pressure on what do I need and what do others need. Not that, not that I'm not taking, this has been a good venture, but it raises the question, and it kind of forces you to think kind of in the direction of because we take care of people all the time at Tribute, coming to the end of their lives, and they're wrestling with these fundamental things, and the material stuff, it's not on the table. Not on.
John,
Yeah.
we talked about last time, and you said you lead with love, right? You talk about leading with love. That's what you do with your company. That's just your culture.
Yeah.
What does it actually look like on a day-to-day in home care?
Yeah. Well, one thing is it's embedded in our mission. It's in our mission statement, and it's in our core values. And, mission statements can be paragraphs and committee put together, and ours is very brief. It's bring love visit after visit to people who need care and the remarkable people who provide it. So it's about how we support each other in furtherance of helping people who need care. And then in our core values, it's bringing love as one of the core values. And so it's an orientation when we're interacting with each other. So I try really hard, and I'm imperfect at this, to be intentional. When I go into a meeting, and most of my work life is meetings, I go into that meeting with an intention about how I want to be in that meeting, and with an anticipation of what's likely to come up and how am I going to react to that. I have a long history of being pretty reactive and volatile. And in the last, 5 to 10 years, I've become much more intentional. I see certainly the pain that causes, but more intentional about how I want to be. And we talk about that in the company, and we hire people that share that vision and are attracted to it. So it shows up in a lot of other different ways, but having clarity of purpose with that word in it is critical.
John, I already knew this was going to be a good conversation. We're only minutes in, and I'm already having a blast. Because these are conversations, John, that people are feeling and don't talk about it, and it's one of those things, like you said, what I was and what I've, how I've changed, and it's that better late than never. At least you've been aware of it. Right. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You could have been the same person your whole life, and probably live a different life, but because you've made the changes, you were aware of it. However that may have come about. A lot of times people don't even get that chance because they just live in it, and that's just who they are, and they make excuses for it, and they don't see it within themselves. And I think I mentioned to you, the last conversation, that I was very similar, very young, where I didn't even know I had these deep-rooted issues that would allow me to, I would like to say, go to 0 from 100. I didn't know the in-betweens, and it was really a lot of my upbringing. It was a lot of the trauma that I was experiencing. I didn't even know that. I'll give you another example. Sometimes you go through things, John, and you're still going through things. You don't even know you're going through it, right? I was speaking to someone else in the healthcare space, and she been clean now for 14 years. She's a mom. That's one of her motivations. And my mom as well, kind of being in the space of drugs and addictions. I didn't know that I still had some emotion, towards her. So the other day we were talking, and I just started almost kind of to tear up. And I'm like, man, I didn't even know there was emotion. But because something triggered that conversation and to think that way, I'm like, man, maybe I need to look at that, a little bit more. And at least we have those conversations with people to just have, a little more insight on what is it that's causing me to do this. So I can imagine you talked about the Bible study. Those guys are so helpful because they're probably saying things that you never thought to even mention. Oh, totally. You were feeling it, you were thinking it, but to hear it from somebody else, it just changes kind of the narrative of who we are as individuals. And as you mentioned, none of us are perfect. We've all done our own, dirt, but we're not living that today. That's who we were in the past. That's that first book that we wrote. It ain't the second book. You know what I mean?
Just back to what you were saying about the drug addiction and your, I guess, childhood experience or early experience, and in the thing that is very interesting to me is the sort of interplay of suffering and love, and how suffering seems to be so important to the manifestation of deep love and understanding what love is. But
Hmm.
we wouldn't want to justify others' suffering because that helps us feel love or manifest love. But it's, you if you're paying attention, and you feel like Jesus, says, what are the two greatest commandments? Or is asked love the Lord God with all your heart and soul and love your neighbors yourself. Boy, if we can keep that front and center, and again, if it's not God, what's something else that will pitch you out of yourself and your focus on your own material well-being? If that's the focus, when I suffer, I can put that in a perspective, which is, what can I gain from this? What can I learn from this? And I can feel it softening my heart, so that in my interactions with people, I'm more humble, or I'm more open to the fact that they've screwed up in life, or they've had a difficult background, and so suffering is actually really important, but I haven't quite worked it all the way through, but
Yeah.
boy,
Okay, I go there with you. I do think that suffering ideally is important. And I say, when people ask me, how did I feel about my life today? I'm 35 years old. How do you feel about life today? Everything you've experienced, all the things you had to encounter. I say grateful.
yeah,
And I say that, John,
yeah,
because without it, I'm not who I am today.
yeah,
Without all of those mistakes, John, without you, not being at maybe some of those spaces that you didn't want to be in, you're not who you are today. Those were experiences you were learning. And I even kind of give it a little more. My wife always says, you should be preaching. And I said, but I am. Every time I share somebody my testimony on how I overcame. And now, John, I would tell someone how John overcame. How my mom overcame. And I'll have these conversations, and in reality, those experiences that we live, whether it's our experiences or with someone else, it truly just helps us become a better version of ourselves. Now, not everybody sees it that way, and not everybody may have that opportunity, but that's how, at least how I seen it, is that I'm grateful, because without that, I don't know that I'm having this conversation with you, John. I don't know if I can relate, in a sense. You know what I mean? So that's just how I look at it, man. So everything that you're saying, I'm dead on with you, man, because I get it. It goes back to, none of us are perfect. We're all just dealing with something internally. Some of us don't know how to. This is me being very transparent with you, right? My mom was very angry when she grew up, growing up. As an adult now, having two kids, I'm like, oh, I get it. My mom had 7 kids.
mm-hmm.
She had to go work 2 jobs. She had to come home. She was a single mom. Had to come home, had to clean. You were acting up. Now she's mad. Probably work was upset. And she just got really angry. As an adult, I'm not saying that it was, some of the things were right, but I can understand now, because I'm a parent. And the other day, when my daughter she's 4 years old, and she's just telling me, no, I'm not going to do this. Or, you know how kids are. They just want to test your patience. I felt the anger in me. But at that moment, at least I was alert of it. Some people
Right.
just automatically, again, go 0 to 100. So it showed me, John, that I was working on me all these years before I became a father, and I was going through these struggles with my wife and at work, and just going off on people. I did not understand, one, that I had anger issues. But when I did, it helped me, because now I'm a father and I'm aware of these things before it could get to a different
And
place.
it sounds like you've, to the extent you were angry at your mother for that, it sounds like you've forgiven her, and um, and that forgiveness. And I had to forgive my father a bunch of years ago, like really actively forgive him. But that too softens your heart, and and helps to end the cycle, because I have anger issues. Of course, I've got anger in me. That's how I grew up. It's in my genes. Um, but forgiveness, not living with the hatred for others, the anger towards others, that is such an important part of the journey too.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the podcast, we first want to say thank you. And we also just want to give you a little insight of what we're up to at Francis. Some don't even realize that we're working with organizations to help them use AI to create that real human communication experiences, whether that's actually supporting your families, those patients, or the entire community. We're actually creating tech that connects. Check it out, francis.ai. I love it. Let's talk. Let's talk about back to the home care because we can go on this conversation. I didn't even know if we were going on down this path, but let's go back to the home care. Home care is something that's deeply personal to you. Mm-hmm. Have you had that moment with a client or family that really just reassured that this is why I do this work?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I mean, I'll tell you one recently, and we attribute everybody who works in an office role is required. We don't use the word required so much attribute, but in this case it's required because it's so critical. It's so mission central or mission critical. Everybody has to go out and visit clients and caregivers on a regular basis, some more than others. I go out every 2 to 3 weeks. And I was out recently and we went to visit a guy who has an oil heating business. He's in his 70s. He still drives a truck. His son is in the business. His wife's at the front desk. And his wife is probably several months away from dying from frontal lobe dementia. And we care for her and for him, not really caring for him, but we're there as a support for him. And his commitment is to keep her at home until she dies. Now, if we're sending in caregivers who are indifferent mm-hmm. or who are just there to carry out tasks, but don't love her and love him, and again, not perfectly, then he can't do what he wants to do. He can't surround his wife with love before she dies. Mm-hmm. And he's deeply committed to her. And frankly, I think atoning for something in the way he acts and talks. I think maybe he wasn't quite what he should have been in their marriage, perhaps, or something. But he takes care of her at night. We would normally be doing round-the-clock care. He takes care of her at night and does personal care for her. And when you're in that moment with the caregiver who's walked into she's a stranger, walked into that place, and you see that it's all really about relationship and love and coming to terms with life and how we want somebody to leave this world. I mean, it's what gets me to say to caregivers when I orient them every week, it's like, this is a gift. This is like a gift you're giving to people that you can't put any kind of value on. What could be more meaningful? You're honoring somebody's humanity, giving them love. And when they leave this world, perhaps they are reminded and leaving the world thinking this world was about love at the end of the day. That's what it was about. That's very powerful, and I see that over and over again. So that's just one recent example. But
I could just see the love and the care that you have for yourself, first of all, but your clients, your staff as well, making sure that they understand and have that same kind of mindset as you. How do you continue to train and really inspire caregivers to go beyond just a job and truly care for their clients? Because as I speak to other leaders in the same space, one of the biggest things they say is that the reason that we caregivers just don't get paid enough, which is why they don't give their love or give that time. Yeah. And you hear that time and time again, but you're in a different space. You really do pour into not just your clients as well, but even though caregivers. How do you continue to do that?
Well, for one, if you lay out at the very beginning a clear, motivating mission for people that is clearly a differentiator, and you start attracting people to that, and they start working and doing good work, you recommit and recommit and recommit. And And if it's a mission like I think ours is, it attracts great people to that. They want, so caregivers in our industry are typically part of a roster. They're working by themselves. They don't feel surrounded by a team. They call the office and they don't hear back for 3 days. And then maybe it's their paycheck's wrong and they need, or the care plan hasn't been updated, or the client is so challenging to them that they don't know how they're going to do another visit. And they're out there alone and they're making, not great wages.
Mhm.
That's bad. That's bad. And from a purely business standpoint, if you want people to show up and bring this love, they have to feel the agency they work for can't be a burden. It's got to be a support. I forget what the question was that you asked me, but how do I keep it going? Part of it is we're out seeing what's going on all the time. I show up with one of our care managers because I just don't want to just walk in and I'm there not with a clipboard to check on things. I'm there to thank and reconnect.
Love it.
That's so important. It's so important, and it just remotivates me. So,
John, listen, it goes back to good leadership, man. I don't care what you say in the beginning of these conversations on who you used to be. It's who you are today, and the leader and caring for people and showing up and making them feel like they matter and that their work doesn't go unrecognized. That's it. That truly changes the game. And a lot of people always, think about, why do I have people that call out or people that don't want to show up? Well, it's because they're not doing enough of what you're talking about. Just showing up and saying thank you. Because without them, the job is not getting done, to be quite frank.
Yeah.
So I love that you kind of stay in that space of always just continue to show love to them,
Well,
so
I
that
think
they
you've
feel.
probably in your life, you think about, what do I want my life to be and where do I find meaning? And
Mhm.
when I get to my last days on this earth, what do I want to reflect on? What do I want?
Mhm.
And, I think we maybe don't ask that question enough. And I don't think we necessarily, I mean, I've been very fortunate because I have a wife that has been totally supportive of my entrepreneurial ventures and my failures and helped me get through them. And that's really, really critical to have a partner in this who loves you and supports you. That's super critical. I don't know how that I could have done it alone, but
It keeps us sane at times, right?
oh my gosh, yeah. As it drives them insane, it makes us.
No, I love it, man. Kudos to all the wives out there, all the ladies that just truly, support us, man, even through our tough
I mean, I
times.
put her through some tough stuff. I mean, like, my very first business, which really we should have just declared bankruptcy, but we were finally able to sell bits and pieces of it. You know, outside my office, we had like three people left in the office and we were in the adult daycare business. We needed to sell a center and we needed to sell it and get that cash in order to pay payroll. And
Yeah.
didn't happen. The buyer said, "No, we're not doing it." I went outside and I sat on the steps, crying my eyes out, and calling my wife. And I mean, because really, it felt like the end of the world. Like I don't
Yeah.
know what we're going to do about money, and I don't know what. Of course, it was an overreaction, but still. But putting your spouse through that, oy, oy, oy.
Yeah. But you know what? That was still the caring in you, right? That, oh my God, there's people that still need to eat. Like, forget about my money. I
Yeah,
just want to make sure that I can
right,
take care of the
right,
people that did the work for me.
right.
It goes back to, you always have this caring in your heart. You know what I mean? So I love it.
Yeah.
But you talked about almost filing bankruptcy, but then in your other business, Tribute, you talked about $30 million in revenue.
Yep.
That doesn't happen by accident.
No.
What were some of those biggest challenges to even get there while keeping the heart of the company still intact?
Well, I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I do think one good thing I did was I paid attention to those mistakes and I really tried to learn from them. And that all had to do with clarity of mission, finding the right people to align with. So we needed investors to get started and picking those carefully and thinking about who the first few people were that were going to join me in this and remembering the partnerships that I had that didn't work out and why they didn't. Um, and then just being super true to this mission that we've set, that our difference. And if I had to give anybody one bit of advice who's starting a business, speaking of not thinking carefully enough about determining the difference that you bring to the marketplace is so important. I mean, I remember in business school, sustainable competitive advantage. Like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. You come into a crowded space like home care and you have not clearly defined how you're going to be different from Home Instead and Visiting Angels and Comfort Keepers and then the mom and pop down the street and all that. If you haven't thought that through very carefully, you're probably not going to do very well. You need to stand out in the marketplace and solve a pain point better, not perfectly, but better than everybody else. And it could be a small pain point, but that's what gets you going. But just being another home care agency, first of all, it's not interesting or exciting. And secondly, we wouldn't have gotten to where we are today if we hadn't clearly defined this difference about caregivers, which seems like, wow, that's a difference. Isn't everybody trying to hire good people? And it's just hard to carry out and hard to have you have to have a whole infrastructure and focus to make that happen. Anyway, I'm talking too much.
No, John, this is for you. Okay, continue to talk. However, listen, I'll give you another one.
Okay.
So many CEOs make mistakes. I'll tell you what. There's no perfect CEO. You could look at the Jeff Bezos. You could look at the Bill Gates. They've all made some part horrible decisions in their lives, but they're successful today. Yeah. And I believe that it comes with just the lessons that we've encountered through our journeys. What has been the hardest lesson you've actually had to learn as a CEO?
Patience. I'm an impatient person.
That is true. Patience.
And that impatience drove some impulsive decision making. It drove eruptions at people. It drove poor decision making. We do this thing at Tribute now where at the end of every quarter we have 2 weeks of it's not pausing. We came up with a better word because pausing sort of meant like don't do any work, but we minimize meetings and everybody, I don't care what position they're in, has time to reflect and think about how to do things better. Pausing. I wish somebody had talked to me about pausing, taking a deep breath, counting to 10. You always make better decisions after reflection and nothing. I mean, obviously if it's a crisis that might, that speeds up the time frame. But, when you want to move the company in a certain direction or you want to correct something that isn't working, you got to take time. You got to move it forward. People want momentum and action and so on. But you've got to do it. You've got to get data. You got to have others involved in the problem. That's another thing. I was never good about bringing people. I had to solve everything, That's pretty common in developing leadership ability. But patience, I would say, is probably the biggest thing I've had to learn.
So I love it. So, and you just talked about wanting to do everything. So do you say at a time in your life you went from micromanaging to delegating?
Yes. At Tribute, I've gotten much better at that. And I think if you were to talk to my executive team, they would say that they have a great deal of autonomy. And that is so important. So important. I want autonomy. I think most people they want to know what they have to do or supposed to do. They want to be given the tools to do it. And they basically, as they learn, they want you to back away and they want to have the freedom to make some mistakes, to make some decisions independently within a framework. So I think that autonomy, and that means you have to have clarity of purpose. And that's where you go back to the mission statement. If the mission is clear, so much falls into place. My job if I'm the controller of the company, bringing love to people and the people what does that mean for my job? And it does mean something for my job. Like really great, clear numbers. That's an act of love. Others can do their job better. I lost.
John, you're doing so well. You're so funny. You're making me laugh. How's your organization currently thinking about like AI as a
Oh,
tool to help
yeah.
support clients and your team actually do more with less? I mean, everyone's kind of in this space, and
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's also affecting, or not, I wouldn't say affecting, but maybe it's already in this space of,
it is. But I think, like a lot of places, it's more about right now kind of being more leveraging. Oh, that word's so overused in business, isn't it? But helping people do their jobs more effectively is where it is right now. There's not like an AI solution that's going to care for people. I mean,
Yeah.
the Japanese have evidently made great strides in building robots that can help people get out of the tub, and maybe some of that's going to happen and might happen in facilities like independent living or assisted living facilities where we provide care to people, supplemental care to people. It may happen there, but right now it's um, I have a problem.
Mhm.
Go to AI, get an answer, talk to it like it's an intern, get an answer, and then work from that because it is going to give you something intelligent. And that's fine because now I can focus even more on the things that I think I'm really good at. And it's like having a really strong assistant. But we're looking at it to help us see if we can't get through applications for, caregiver applications more effectively, to see if we can't schedule, when somebody calls out for a visit, not so easy to always find a replacement. So looking at behavioral data and data about who's accepted visits in the past and availability. Can we be more efficient there and have that be a less painful process? So, I mean, we're definitely using it, and it's getting better and better for
It
sure.
is.
Oh, totally. And so, yeah, I think it's transformative, but you have
I
to
love
be
it.
purposeful in a business to adopt it and get people to start, using
Yeah,
it.
and I'm happy that you are willing to even think about technology such as AI, and hope that team members won't kind of resist it, because I think we're in a space where it is, as you mentioned, we're just at the beginning stages of what AI could
Oh
potentially
my
do
gosh,
for a lot of organizations.
totally.
Is it going to take away that person-to-person interaction? 100% not. I
Yeah,
think
it's
we
not
never get away from that.
right.
But as you mentioned, it makes life a little easier. The way, something that would take us weeks to probably even put together or think of, it's taking us seconds now by just truly having a conversation at times. Like I use ChatGPT all the time, and I'm just talking into it like this in the mic, like, "Hey, I have this
Totally.
idea." I'm gonna, and the things that it comes up with, you're like, "Wow." And to me, I think I even get better now because it tells me things that I didn't even think to put it together like that,
That's the thing.
and I'm like, "Oh, wow."
I don't think it is a cost reduction tool. I think it
Yeah.
is about more carrying out your mission or strategy more effectively. It's about making you a more effective at what you do. It might, as a company grows, it might mean we're hiring fewer people. Could be. That's a source of worry. But I also think AI is going to enable so much more entrepreneurship, and that will
Mhm.
create jobs, some of which would have been created before AI, perhaps. So we're a business, like an entrepreneurship culture in America. We have a lot of startup businesses, and we don't ever want to lose that. And I think this is a tool to give people even more ability to do that.
100% agree.
Yeah.
100. What's the next big goal for Tribute Health Home Care? You have any plans that you're
Yes.
working on?
Yes. We have financial plans, but that's sort of boring. But we realized I went back and looked at my business plan from 12 years ago, 13 years now, and there was a vision for what we wanted the caregiver experience to be that we haven't entirely carried out. Some of which we couldn't afford when we started. Now we can afford it. Some of which is just really hard to carry out because it's so. For example, I want to offer somebody who comes to Tribute a really rich, pretty intensive a caregiver. I'm talking about
Mhm.
onboarding, not just a really good day long orientation and some shadow visits, but like a more prolonged, uh, not boot camp, that's too intense, but a more prolonged, intensive training where they're interacting a lot with our great caregivers and they're giving
Yeah.
them pointers and they're learning how to. When you do that, of course, you got to take people are less available to provide care, and we're always straining to find enough caregivers. So, but we're recommitting right now. We have a group recommitting to our vision, an audacious vision for caregivers that's going to involve that career pathways, more predictable pay increases, and more enriched paid time off benefit, that sort of stuff. But we're recommitting there, and I'm very excited about that more than anything.
I'm excited as well.
Yep.
Continue to grow. 30 years and you're still, looking on ways to grow, and I think that's amazing. 30 years, some people say stagnant at times, but you're 30 years and still going. All right, 30 years plus at this point.
Yeah, I'm actually more energized right now than I have been in a long time, and I have a lot of friends that are starting to think about retirement. They're, well, are you going to retire? It's not. I don't think so. They may have to
Feeling good,
they have to throw me out, but
Hey,
I'm excited about it. Right.
that's how committed you are to what you do. Something that started as a young boy, and here you are, an adult and still carrying this mission 30 plus years and probably even more, because I think you kind of went into the entrepreneurial route as a coach. I think that's what you mentioned a little earlier. If someone's listening and they really want to make an impact in elderly care, where would they actually start? Where did they start?
It goes back to, I think, a little bit of what I was saying earlier. You have to find a pain point in the marketplace, something that's not being addressed well, and of course you hope that the solving of that dovetails with what your interest or your passion is in life. But even if it isn't, you can develop a passion if you're solving a problem really well in the marketplace. But I think you got to start there. I think a lot of people start businesses and they just haven't been disciplined about what that is. And you have to be willing to get out there and talk to a lot of people to test your idea. And some are going to say, no, it's not a pain point, or no, it's a bad idea, or no, I would, so but that's the advice I would give. If you want to start a business, that's what you got to do.
Good advice. And we're actually wrapping up here. And I know we can go more, but we've already spent 40 minutes giving out some good gems, having good conversations, and hope that people definitely take away some good stuff out of this. But I'm going to hit you with a curveball. This is the blind question time.
Uh-oh.
If I gave you a billboard in the middle of Times Square and you could put any message on it, something that you believe the world actually needs to hear today, what does it actually say?
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty predictable. I think it would either be love your neighbor as yourself, bring love, be something with love in it. And something about being relentless in pursuit of loving. There's one other thing I've kind of learned, and I'll be quick. I may have mentioned this to you when we had our first conversation. There's something in the Bible that is about love casts out all fear, but also love has a way of organizing everything in this. It's like taking chaos and turning it into order. And if you do nothing else every day in business, but focus on how I'm going to interact with you and how this meeting is going to go, and how do I care for you in this meeting, and you know what? So much falls into place. It just falls into place. We as human beings make things so difficult because we're looking ahead and we're focused on my needs. Boy, if you just can do that, you start to build a habit like that, and it really solves so many problems. Okay.
John, you're too funny. John, this has been truly incredible. Such a phenomenal time. As I knew I would. Before we started, I told you, I said, I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well,
I knew it was going to be
You're very good at this. You ask good questions and you make it very conversational. So I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Where can people find out more about Tribute Home Care and really support your mission?
Yeah, just tributehomecare.com. And my email is, I think it's on there or not, but it's easy to find, and somebody could call the office, and I'm always happy to talk to people, particularly people who want to start businesses, or and they won't get lectures. They might just hear about things to try to avoid, because I've made all the mistakes you can make. So
that's it. That's how we live. See, That's how we go through those things, to teach others, John. I always look at it.
Exactly. Right.
I always believe that that's why we go through things, to teach
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
Well, John, this has been a pleasure. For you guys that are still watching, thank you guys so much. Make sure that you guys do subscribe, like, share with a friend. We have so many leaders, whether they're in the nonprofit healthcare spaces, that are really making an impact, love what they do, making a difference every single day of their lives. And you can see that John, 30 plus years, has really been committed to just changing the lives of elder care with Tribute Home Care. Guys, my name is Ephraim. We got John, Hart and Hustle Podcast. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Thank you.